You're listening to a weekly podcast made by Miami Dolphin fans for Miami Dolphin fans. Your source for entertaining Dolphin news, insight, and general conversation. Here's your host, Michael Fink.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. The Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. All right, it's Monday about noon, and we played the Redskins yesterday. Snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, I suppose. Ragone is here with me. Tell me about your thoughts on the game.
Well, we came a lot closer to winning a football game this week, obviously. One play away, not a great play call at the end of the game. A lot of people have that opinion of the play. It just seems like the play call may have not been a bad one, Mike, but the execution just wasn't there.
Well, there was something wrong on that play. It's fundamentally wrong because when you look at that play, when Drake caught the ball, he's 5 yards from the end zone, and there's three or four defenders between him and the goal line. So the odds of him scoring, even if he catches it, were remote at best. I mean, he can make people miss, but he's not going to make four people miss.
Exactly.
So something happened on that play. Now, as a side note, on the previous play on Devontae Parker's touchdown, it turns out that the center got hurt.
Okay.
And they started moving bodies all around the offensive line to make up for that. So I'm thinking maybe one of those linemen that should have gotten out there had no idea what to do, and it didn't happen.
So Kildor went out. Kilgore.
Kilgore.
Killed us. He killed us all day yesterday.
Pretty much.
Him and the rest of the offensive line. But, that makes a lot of sense, I guess, to an extent. But the play was just off. The throw wasn't great.
It was a little bit behind him. It was on his back shoulder.
Right. And, I didn't think it was going to be successful, whether he caught it, just like you said. But, overall yesterday, it was fun to watch. At least the fourth quarter was. The first three quarters were just a lot of the same. Horrible offensive line play across the board.
The first quarter was brutal to watch.
First quarter was absolutely horrible. It seemed like the Redskins, their strategy was to just constantly put pressure on Rosen, and they were throwing everything at him, and it was working. So why stop it?
Yeah, I mean, he has, the book on Rosen is basically that he doesn't handle pressure well. And I think you saw that confirmed yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. He struggled. I think he got rattled as the game progressed, and he had time to throw. And we're getting right into Rosen here, which is kind of what I didn't want to do. But
well, let's not. Go ahead and refer back to the game, and we'll get back to Rosen.
Yeah, we'll go back to the game. Overall, I felt that the defense played a pretty solid game, but I had some issues. I mean, the Redskins coming in have a couple of guys that they're gonna pound Peterson, and they're gonna throw to the rookie McLaren, and both guys had over 100 yards. McLaren had over 100 yards receiving. Peterson went over 100 yards rushing the football, and coming in, those are the two guys that if you stop them, they're not getting any points on the board. They're not going to move the football at all, and we were incapable of stopping Peterson at times. There were a few drives where he was just running all over us, and you knew he was getting the rock. So that was disturbing, and we didn't come up with any turnovers yesterday either. Now, you look at the scoreboard and you see 17 points, that Washington put up, and you're satisfied with that. But again, this wasn't a very good offense coming in. So, I give them an average grade. I thought they did a pretty good job. The fact that Xavier Howard was out had an effect on the secondary, even though
sure did.
Nick Needham came in and played an extremely good game.
Remember that I got to be honest, that shocked me.
Yeah, well, I mean, we watched him and we made comment to him during the preseason how horrible he was.
He was horrible.
Number 40. Who is this number 40? He's getting smoked on every play. I mean, I was like, holy cow, what is this guy doing on a football field? But he comes in. They brought him up from the practice squad, correct?
Yes, he was outstanding, by the way. He was outstanding.
Right. He played a really, really good football game. And, again, the competition you're going up against in regard to the Redskin group of receivers, Jeremy Sprinkle, Trey Quinn, Paul Richardson. Okay, but they did a fairly good job yesterday. Again, we're on the losing side, but and we didn't have our best defensive players. So, it's an average grade for them. The offense failed up until the fourth quarter. We got, Fitzpatrick came in, and we'll talk about him a little bit later as well, and they were able to move the football and get back into the football game and almost win it. So overall, you got to be somewhat satisfied. We were a little shorthanded yesterday, in a few positions, but they did a pretty solid job, and again, we're at what now, 0-5?
We are.
You can't be overly satisfied with it.
No, but what you want to see, Lewis, is you want to see the youngsters performing well. And I think on defense, obviously, like we said, Needham had a great game. Vince Beagle showed himself well.
Yes.
Kristen Wilkins showed himself well. Raekwon McMillan showed himself well. So those are good signs.
Yes, absolutely. They had some good performances on the defensive side. On the offensive side, it's so hard.
A little rougher.
It's a little rougher. Dieter, across that line, Mike, I don't think anybody played well. I mean, I got to tell you, the pass rush was coming from up the middle, from the out. It didn't matter.
The guards were really bad.
Oh,
yesterday.
I mean, it was so Dieter, and we've got to give him some time because he is a rookie and he's been thrown into the mix immediately
and moved around all over the place.
Exactly. I mean, there was actual talk that he was going to start at left tackle yesterday. Correct?
Yes.
For a short time last week. So. The bottom line is that every week we've had a completely different offensive line. I don't think we've had the same 5 guys out there once yet this season over the first 5 games, and it shows. And, the fact is that Dieter is getting the experience and, going in the next season and, as we progress through this season, hopefully he gets better. He becomes a much better football player. And Jesse Davis is another one that I know he's playing somewhat injured, but he just had a horrible game at that right tackle position yesterday. I mean, Early in the game, they were just destroying him.
They gave up 4 pressures.
Right. And that's not Deacon Jones that you're playing up against either, So, I mean, it was rough overall. And the problem becomes this, Mike, when we're trying to evaluate the young players. You've got a situation where you're trying to see what you have in Preston Williams and Jasecki and guys like that. And even Walton. Walton, by the way, started yesterday.
Thought he played well.
He played well. Exactly. He did a really good job. It's kind of what they did yesterday is how we thought they would do things coming into the season. Balaj getting the ball around by the goal line and powering the football in, which he did yesterday. He actually was involved on the fake punt, too, by the way, which was a really, really fun play and a nice play. And he did a good job on that as well. And then you have, Drake, who's your third down guy who had an excellent, he made a lot of plays in the fourth quarter. I thought he did a really good job running the football yesterday for us. I think he averaged about 4 yards a carry again behind that offensive line, and it's saying something. Walton averaged, I think, over 5 yards a carry rushing the football.
Yeah.
I know he had an 18-yard run, but that's part of the mix.
Right.
It all counts. So, overall, I thought the running backs did a good job, and I liked that. I liked the roles that they put them in yesterday. They put every guy where they should have been. Early in the year, you saw Balaj going out and, involved in the passing game, and that was a complete failure. And, we couldn't understand it, and it seems like they've made the adjustments. And yesterday, they were all productive in their own way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the way they were using the backs yesterday.
Right, but
let's get back to Davis for a second.
Go ahead.
Here's my issue with Davis, okay? And it's not with him personally, but with the way they're using him.
Right.
He played right tackle yesterday.
Right.
He had played left tackle. He had played right guard.
You're right.
They're moving him all around, and I really think that's tough on a lineman. I just feel like they need to put these guys in one position and let them settle in there and get good at what they're doing. And I know, they're trying to fill players in where they think they'll fit best when other guys are injured. I get that. But sometimes I think you're better off just going weaker at one position than weakening your entire line trying to make up for an injury.
Right. I totally get what you're saying. And what they're doing is they're having guys moved around, adjusting to these injuries, and basically you're hurting two positions while you're doing that. And I don't understand. Their logic is they're going to put the best 5 linemen out there. That's the route they're going, Mike. They're saying, okay.
No, I get that. I get that.
And
exactly
I know you get
doing.
it. I know you get it. I'm just explaining it to everybody that's listening. They're trying to get the 5 best players on the football field. But to your point, they're hurting us in a sense because they're not establishing guys at one position. They did it to Dieter as well. Didn't they move him over to left tackle for one of the games this year? I mean, leave him at left guard, and whoever the second best guy is at that left tackle position, who is your backup for that position, you plug him in there. Because to your point, again, you're weakening two positions. Now, that's our take on it. Obviously, our coaching staff has a different philosophy on it. They're putting their 5 best offensive linemen on that given week on the football field, and I don't think it is helping us. I don't really agree with that philosophy, and I don't think you do either. So
no, I really don't.
No, I don't either. So, that's where we're at, and, we got to hope that, I guess if that's the philosophy that our coaching staff is going to use, then we have to hope that these guys stay healthy the rest of the year so we can have the same 5 guys playing the same 5 positions.
There's a reason guards are guards and not tackles.
Right, exactly. It's Mike, listen, the bottom line is it's been a disaster. And we knew it was going to be bad. Did we think it was going to be this bad? Probably not. It's been a situation where every single week we haven't had the same offensive line. I think I already said that. And it's showing on the football field. And getting back to my point, and again, you made a really good point with Davis because he has played, I think, 3 different positions over 5 games. And he's playing hurt on top of that.
That's right.
So, the guy I have the biggest problem with across that offensive line is Kilgore. He's our veteran. He should be our rock in the middle at center. The guy snaps the ball, about 8 inches, on a big 3rd down play yesterday, but he just didn't play well on top of that. He had a horrible game. They were getting pressure up the middle, and he's the guy you expect the most from, and he was probably the biggest failure yesterday overall. I think he played the worst across the offensive line, and that's saying a lot. Now, with that being said, it's very difficult to evaluate your young players. Walton running the football and Jasecki trying to get down the field and making plays, Preston Williams. When the quarterback doesn't have time to do things or the running back doesn't have lanes to run through, you can't evaluate these guys. So the offensive line is a struggle. And it affects the way you're going to be able to evaluate these other young guys. On the defensive side of the football,
it slows the progression of your offense.
Absolutely. I didn't agree with the fact that they named Rosen the starter for the rest of the year. I felt that they should just take it week to week for this exact reason. Because now Fitzpatrick came in and the fan base and even the players. If you're on this team, Mike, as a player, you're a Preston Williams, you're a Devontae Parker, and you get the football in the matter of a quarter, you get the ball thrown to you more than you did the whole football game. It's telling, how do you go out next week and say, well, you know what, I'd rather have Rosen in the game? These players, the coaching staff's going to have to sell this to the players that, listen, this is what we're trying to do. But as a football player, if I'm on the Miami Dolphins and I'm a wide receiver, I want Fitzpatrick on the football field right now. Do you agree with that?
Well, let's not forget his first 2 games. Hey guys, I wanted to break in here real quick just to ask a favor of you. On the app that you're listening on, if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the podcast. Hit like, leave a comment on your thoughts of the show. And if you didn't know, we do run a Facebook group. It's Miami Dolphins #1. That's #1. We talk Dolphins football 24/7, 365. We'd love to have you join us and share your thoughts. And once again, we want to thank you for listening. Let's make it a habit. We'll see you next week.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Right. So, if I'm the coach, I think there's a way to approach this as to where you kind of save face. And you just say to the team, hey, look, whoever's got the hot hand is going to play. If we start Rosen this coming week and by halftime he's not getting it done, we'll make a change again.
Right. But the bottom line is that they named him the starter, and we're going to see much of the same for the rest of the season. I mean, coming into this week's game, now we're going up to Buffalo to play Buffalo. Now, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, they're going to look at this game film, and they're going to approach this game the same way the Redskins did.
Right.
They're going to throw...
You remember Woodstock, right? I look at it as the same type of situation.
Exactly. This is the situation I think we're going to be in week to week until Rosen proves that he can overcome and make some plays when they send blitzes. And when he has time is my concern. Because
I'm going to get into that, Lewis.
Go ahead. Why don't you get into it right now? Unless you want to stay on the game, Mike, and then we can get back to it.
Let's do that. Let's stay on the game, and we'll leave this for when we're done talking about the game.
Okay, so we discussed Needham and the game he had. I felt he played a pretty solid game. The offensive line we already discussed. We already discussed Drake. Parker. Somebody mentioned on our Facebook page that everybody overlooked the touchdown catch at the end of the game by Parker, and it was a nice play.
I said that. Yes.
It was you? Okay.
Yes.
So he beat his man to man. It was a big play in the game, and it was a great catch. And he held on to the football, and he puts us in a position to win it there. So, I felt that, a lot of guys on the offensive side of the football did a really solid job yesterday behind a really bad offensive line, other than the quarterback, our starting quarterback.
Yeah.
I felt the secondary held up pretty well, considering our best player was out. The linebackers did an average job. Again, when the other team rushes for, well over 100 yards, it's kind of hard to give them a great grade, but I thought they did an average job yesterday. So, I mean, did anybody else stand out for you, Mike, in regard to any of the players?
Well, I mean, on defense, I thought Rashad Jones made his presence felt.
Right.
McMillan, I thought, was solid again.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Needham. John Jenkins played okay in a reserve role.
Right.
Vince Beagle played okay at right outside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're seeing, like I said, some of the young guys come in and do well. But there's other young guys coming in not doing so well. And, Taco Charlton, he had a real big game last week, but this week really didn't do much of anything that I noticed. And,
no, he disappeared.
They were running around his end quite a bit. So.
Right. And Charles Harris, we can basically just... first-round pick.
He got 12 snaps yesterday, Lewis.
Yeah, 12 snaps. My goodness.
So that tells you where they're going with Charles Harris.
And there's really not a lot of depth at that defensive end position. So what does that tell you about this guy? Another first-round pick that's above and beyond failure at this point. And I don't think anything's going to change with him. I'd be shocked if he even makes the team next year. He's going to be a casualty. And, there's really nothing. The special teams played well yesterday. Yes. They had another solid game. Nice solid kick. Our punter did a good job. We had, the fake punt that we referred to earlier.
He shanks one every now and then, but I think overall he's done a phenomenal job. He's a good punter.
And the coverage is good. They've done a very, very good job on special teams. They've been pretty solid there as well. So,
I know who we forgot to talk about. Our free safety.
McCain?
Yeah.
Yeah, McCain had a solid game
He
yesterday as well.
He had a pretty good game.
Mm-hmm.
He had a pretty good game. My only thing is, he's a guy I look to get in there and pick something off, and he really hasn't had that opportunity. He needs to get around the ball more.
Yeah, Mike, without a pass rush, I mean, it really, really hurts your secondary. Again, no turnovers yesterday. It really hurts your secondary because there's no pressure, there's no rushed throws, there's no mistakes by a quarterback. I mean, they're able, and yesterday it was the same situation. The opposing quarterbacks are able to stand there flat-footed, look around, pick out where they're going. Usually they go to a receiver that's isolated on one of our cornerbacks. It happened again yesterday. McLaren had one-on-one coverage, and he was beating our guy, and it was downfield. So they're able to sit back and make these throws, and of course that's going to affect turnovers in the secondary. I mean, I think it's more to that point than it is him not being able to make plays. I think they did a solid job yesterday overall, considering Howard was out. So, all
right, now I'm going to talk about Rosen a little bit.
Sure, my favorite.
I started. Well, it is. No. I started to watch that game, and the first quarter, I felt sorry for him. I'll be honest with you, because there was a lot of heat in the kitchen.
Yep.
And like I said before, the book on him is he doesn't handle pressure well, and he didn't handle it particularly well yesterday. But what was alarming to me was not how he performed under pressure, but how he performed when there wasn't any pressure. He had 34 dropbacks, and there was no pressure on 19 of those. And on those 19 passes, he threw 11 completions, which is 57.9 completion percentage, which is, I'm sure everybody knows, is not good enough in today's NFL.
Right.
He had 2 batted passes. He had 1 pass dropped. And these are all, on those throws there was no pressure.
Okay.
He had 1 first down on those 11 completions. He averaged 2.4 yards per attempt.
2.1, you said?
2.4.
2.4. Wow. 2.5 yards. Wow.
Right, per attempt. Now, let's put that in perspective, okay? Fitzpatrick came in. He had 15 plays where he wasn't pressured. He had 11 completions, 1 touchdown, 7 first downs, and 8.1 yards per attempt. Now, granted, he was running in no huddle, and, maybe the defense is backing off just a little bit.
Right.
But you can see that one guy is getting it done without pressure and the other guy isn't. And that is a concern. Your quarterback has got to be able to complete passes for first downs when nobody's harassing him in the pocket.
Absolutely.
Now, the only thing I'm going to say in his defense, and it needs to be said, is, they're going to max protect most of the time, which means, he's got 3 men out in the pattern.
Right.
But still, he's got to find a way to get that ball in there. He's too timid. He's got to throw it and let his receivers get open.
Right. Exactly.
It's called throwing them open, and you got to do it. He's just got to be a little bit more aggressive, and because there's no excuse for 2.4 yards per attempt. There's no excuse for that. That reminds me of check down Tannehill. There's just no reason for it. You've got to go downfield. Remember Marino against the Bears in '85, right?
Yeah.
They blitzed the hell out of him, but he under pressure was able to deliver. When he wasn't pressured in that game, he was able to deliver. And if you're going to have a franchise quarterback, I don't care if it's Marino, Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson, or Josh Rosen, they've got to make plays. And I have seen nothing from Rosen so far for me to say he has that it factor.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Mike, as I watch him, there's no urgency. I mean, to me, it seems like it's like you're watching Tannehill all over again. That the urgency, the intensity, it's not there. Now,
the difference between him and Tannehill to me is he has a little better pocket presence.
Agreed.
That's the difference to me. Other than that, they're the same quarterback.
They're very, very similar, and Rosen is not as athletic as Tannehill, and
and probably not as accurate either.
He can't get away from pressure, whereas Tannehill could run a little bit once he got going. But the comparison yesterday, I mean, here's a 36-year-old guy in Fitzpatrick, and when he threw the touchdown at the end of the game, did you see how fired up he was? I mean, you can see when he comes into the game how jacked up he is, and this is what you want out of your quarterback.
The announcer said it, Lou. He's a gamer.
He's a gamer, but But regardless of the fact, you still, he's a gamer, but you have to bring that sort of intensity onto the field with you. You have to have that, like, just that X factor. And like you mentioned a minute ago, I don't see it in him. And the physical attributes are not there either. So you're looking at a guy that teams know how to defend. And that's what we ran into with Tannehill, that the book was out there on him. He never made adjustments. He never got any better than what he was year in and year out. And I think we're looking at the same thing. If this guy cannot produce on the circumstances that are going to be thrown at him, then he is what he is going forward. So, with that being said...
Well, you'd expect Buffalo to copy the same exact blueprint.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we'll see next week how he adjusts and if he makes any changes to his game. But, there's only so much you can do in a week. But if I were talking to him, I would say you've got to be more aggressive. You've got to give your receiver. You got 2 tall receivers on the outside. You've got to give them a chance, because when they're only sending 3 receivers out, back and these 2 tall kids, you got to throw it up and give them a chance to get it. Just be accurate with the football.
Absolutely.
Give them an opportunity, and you'll be fine.
Mike, it's there's a play in the game. I'll refer back to the game real quick where he throws the ball down the middle of the field to Gesicki. And Gesicki's about 30 yards down the middle of the field. And the 2 safeties are sitting right there in the middle of the field. And the one safety comes up and almost intercepts it. So he throws basically into double coverage there. Now, that's a bad read, and it was on a play where he had time to throw the football. He looked down the middle of the field. He did this all day yesterday. He locked in on receivers, and I watched him doing it over and over again. Now, to your point just now, you've got 2 receivers on the outside that are probably man-to-man, because the 2 safeties were sitting right in the middle of the field. Look at Gesicki, and if that's the situation, then you got to look outside at one of your receivers, because I can guarantee you one of them is beating his guy man to man. They're both pretty solid.
When we say he was rattled, that's a byproduct of being rattled. You're not taking the time to go through your progressions.
Well, when you have that kind of time to sit there and throw as a professional quarterback, you got to make those plays, Mike, regardless of whether you're rattled or not. It is what it is. So if he's going to get rattled early in games and it's going to affect him for 3 quarters, then he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's that simple. If a team comes out and they just start knocking you around early in the first quarter and you're done for the rest of the game, that's it. You're done. Yep. That's the way it's going to be. I mean, you have to respond to that. You have to, as a coaching staff and as a quarterback in the NFL, you have to make the adjustments.
Well, he wasn't, and that's why he was benched.
Exactly. And were you surprised by that? Because I sort of was. I did not see it coming. I mean, I was thinking it, but I never thought they were going to do it.
Because he had just announced him the starter going forward, it was surprising, but not unwarranted.
By no means unwarranted, because you saw the result. If I'm a head coach on this football team and I'm watching this, and the first quarter, okay, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They were throwing a lot of blitzes at him. But as I watched the second quarter, I made notes in the second and the third quarter. He threw a couple of interceptions, a couple of bad interceptions.
No, hold on. I got to defend him on those interceptions.
Okay.
And I said this in the game chat, and after the game, John Kangemi, do you know who he is?
Yes, he's an ex-quarterback.
He is, and he said the same thing that I said. And what I said was, our receivers at the top of their routes are not aggressive. They become stationary, waiting for the ball to get to them. Mm-hmm. They've got to attack the football. And when you don't do that, it gives the defender the angle to jump in front of you and intercept the pass. And that's the problem that I saw with both of those interceptions. Both of those balls should have either been contested or completed to us. And because the receivers were lazy, it didn't happen.
It's possible. I mean, I think it goes both ways. On one of the interceptions specifically, Mike, and I don't remember which one it was, it didn't seem like there was an awful lot on the throw. It looked like he was
Well, there may not have been, but it was a catchable pass had the receiver actually made an attempt to get back to the football.
Right. Well, I mean, again, I think we're splitting hairs here. If a receiver is that close to your, and if a defender, I should say, is right on top of the receiver and he's in a position to where he can make that play, and you can blame it on the receiver as well. It may have been both parts, but
let me say something to you. We are saying that Rosen needs to be more aggressive and throw his receivers open. Well, there's a flip side to that. And the flip side to that is when he does that, the receivers need to do everything they can to make the play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But on the one interception that I'm referring to, the corner was all over him. He was covered. He had him covered, and regardless of what the situation was, the corner or the safety or whoever it was that was covering him, it was in the middle of the field somewhere, was right there, to make the play. And yeah, maybe he didn't make the proper, he didn't come back to the ball enough, but
it's all about angles, Lou.
It's angles, and it's reading defenses and, possibly going elsewhere with the football. Listen, how many times in the fourth quarter did Fitzpatrick get the ball in the flat to where it became a productive play? And that's all it takes. I mean, Drake extended a few drives and so did Walton on just simple throws, underneath. And that's what you have to do as a quarterback. I mean, you have to get it done, the bottom line. And you can, we can refer back to the receivers, Mike. When Fitzpatrick came into the game, the receivers didn't have problems. I don't think he threw anything that even came close to being an interception.
Well, remember now, it's not apples to apples, because in the beginning of the game, they were bringing a lot of pressure on Rosen. When Fitzpatrick came in there, they were not.
Right, but I'm not talking about the first quarter, Mike. I'm referring back to times where he had time to throw. And on the interception, he did have time to throw. It wasn't like a guy was bearing down on him.
I agree with that.
In the first quarter, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. There's no question about it. I'm talking about for the remaining three quarters of the football game. You saw, and I'll tell you what, the game wasn't out of reach. It wasn't like we were down by 35 points and Fitzpatrick came in and led us to 2 drives late because the defense was sitting back. Oh no, once we scored that first touchdown, it was on, because the Redskins knew, the defense knew, the coaching staff on the Redskins knew that we were a touchdown behind from tying this game up, and they were playing. It wasn't that sort of, it wasn't garbage touchdowns.
No.
So Fitzpatrick performed under those circumstances, and he gave our guys opportunities over and over again. The very first pass he threw, I think, was an 18-yard completion to Devontae on the outside, and we didn't see any of that the whole day. You want something. When you have 85 yards passing through 3/4 of a football game with 2 interceptions, Mike, regardless of whether your receivers are coming back to the football or not, those are just absolutely horrific numbers. My God,
those are 2 different topics of conversation, though.
Right.
I'm telling you that the receivers get lazy at the top of their routes, and that's a fact. You watch it, you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to you, pay attention to it and see if you don't see it.
Right. It's possible. Mike, do you think it's possible that over the course of the football game that the guys are just not playing up to... do you really believe that a guy like an Aaron Rodgers or Dan Marino, you referred to him earlier, would even put up with something like that? And this is my point.
No, I don't. He would get in their face and he would say something.
Absolutely. Did you hear the commentator during the game when Fitzpatrick came into the game, that look at what he does? He just energizes the rest of your players. This is the type of guy he is, and this is what I'm talking about in regard to Josh Rosen. Don't you think that it feeds off of the quarterback? The quarterback has got to be the guy that puts this or instills it or demands it from the rest of the team.
Absolutely.
And that's my whole point.
Well, that all falls under leadership and that type of thing. But
you got to have that. Do you think Baker Mayfield, Mike, is allowing, regardless of whether it's Landry or Beckham or any of those guys, to just get lazy on routes? Absolutely not. He's a young guy.
He's having his own struggles, but he's a pretty vocal kid. I doubt it.
He's vocal, but he brings brings that intensity. And yesterday, even though they came off a bad game the week before, he responded. He played well. Mayfield, but and Darnold came back from after being out for a few weeks, and they went and beat Dallas. And this is my point. Other guys are doing well, and I know that they're playing behind better offensive lines, and maybe they have better personnel on offense, but.
Well, Mahomes doesn't play behind a very good offensive line.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's other teams. I mean, Phillip Rivers didn't play behind a good offense.
No, he did not.
And they killed us, by the way, because, boy, we want Pittsburgh to lose week in and week out, and unfortunately they didn't get the job done. But, even a guy like Rivers, struggled behind a bad offensive line, and I get that. But Phillip Rivers still had that intensity, and he was in defenders' faces and doing everything possible, and he almost had him back in that football game yesterday. They were missing, I think, 3 offensive linemen. It has an effect, there's no question about it, but I'm not talking about anything surrounding Rosen. I'm talking about him as an individual and what I see him lacking, and that cannot be taught, Mike. I truly believe this. He's got to come on the field regardless of who's playing in front of him and take control. And I just see him, especially in this game, against mediocre competition, just not bringing it up to another level. And
there's a swagger
exactly.
that is missing. And
exactly.
I think that's the best way to put it. There's a swagger that's missing.
Yeah, swagger, whatever adjective you want to put on it, Mike. The point is that I don't see it in him. I just don't. And
well, if I ask you what is it you don't see, basically your answer is leadership. It's, energizing the team, making the players around him better, and all those other cliches.
Intensity, exactly. I mean, I talked about this either last week or the week before. As far as, as the game progressed against Dallas, to me it seemed like he was getting lazy on some of his throws, and he didn't have that same fire he had. Like, we saw him early in one of the games come out, and he looked really, really good.
True.
In a couple of the games, he came out, but he doesn't maintain that. And it has nothing to do with getting hit. I mean, you've got to play 4 quarters. You're a professional. When you went to your job, Mike, you didn't go out and work the first 2 hours of your shift or whatever it is you were doing in life and then take the next 6 hours off. This guy has to bring it for 4 quarters, regardless of whether he's getting hit over and over again. I mean, we can make all the excuses in the world for him. The bottom line is I just don't see it in him.
You can't make an excuse for 2.4 yards in it.
You can't. You just can't do it. And, going forward, I mean, if we want to have fun over the course of this football season, regardless of whether Fitzpatrick has bad games or not, it's fun to watch. That's the bottom line. It's fun to see receivers making plays down the field. And that throw to Gesicki and that catch by Gesicki down the middle of the field was awesome. It was great. It was a great play all the way around. And you watch that throw compared to the one earlier in when Rosen threw it down the field, and maybe it was late, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but they were the same play call, Mike. If you look at both plays, one play gets almost intercepted, and the other one gets caught for what, a 28-yard, something like that down the middle of the field. I don't know how many yards it was, but
I think it was 30, but you're close enough.
It was close enough. You get my point. It was a positive play compared to a negative play earlier in the game, and it was the same exact play call. So,
all right. So you're Flores. What do you say to Rosen this week?
I already said what I had to say to him, that you're the starting quarterback. I came out in the public. I mean, now back me up as a player. Go out there and do what you have to do. Mike, I mean, he gave him the starting position for the rest of the season. I mean, he put it out there to the public. He made it known that, listen, Rosen's my starter the rest of the year, regardless of what takes place. Does anything else need to be said to him? I mean, he gave him the reins to this
absolutely.
To this team.
Because absolutely, there's something else that can be said.
Okay, go ahead.
The coach, the coach makes the rules. Right. He can very well say, "Hey, listen, I named you the starter, for the rest of the season.
Right.
But I did not expect a performance like that. And if that continues, then I'm going to have to rethink my decision.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm good with that. You know, I had a problem with him doing that to begin with, Mike, because I always feel that you should have somebody. You should listen. First of all, you should go out with the most intensity you can. Period. Okay, you should go out there, and maybe he's just a different animal altogether. But in this profession, you know, when you're showing that, and we saw this with Tannehill, I mean, to me, it always seemed like he was just going through the motions. He didn't have that X factor. And maybe it's just not in his DNA. Maybe he just doesn't have it, Rosen.
Well,
but
okay, but you watched Staubach and you watched Greasy and you watched later quarterbacks that just didn't have that emotional spark, you know, eluding from them. It can be done, but you've got to earn it with your play on the field. If you're going to be a quiet leader, you've got to get the job done.
Exactly. You have to.
Because you have to earn respect somehow. You're either going to earn it through your words and mannerisms, or you're going to earn it through your actions on the field. And he's not earning it with his actions on the field. And if he wants to get the same type of enthusiasm throughout his teammates as Fitz did late in that game, then he's going to have to figure out a way to perform at a higher level.
Exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, if I'm like I said earlier, if you're a football player on this Miami Dolphins team, and you know what, Mike, it reflects. I'm not only talking about the guys that play with him on the offense. It affects the whole team. It affects the coaching staff,
absolutely,
play calling,
confidence.
Momentum. It gets picked up right away. As a defensive coordinator, you're like, okay, you know what? We're back in this game. We're going to take a few shots right now. We're going to do things a little bit differently. Because now we're like jacked up. The defensive side, it affects them as well as players. You're like, all right, now we're in this game. Let's go out there and get a stop.
Yeah, get a stop, because we know he has
exactly.
a chance to score and win the game.
Exactly. Instead of 3 and out. Now, if you look at our first halves over the course of this season, going into the half, we were in games, but what did we have? In the second half, in the third quarter, it was more of the same, 3 and out, and then we'd fall behind by 2 touchdowns, and then before you knew it, it was 3 touchdowns, and we still weren't doing anything as an offense. We were going out there, and we were still not scoring even garbage points at the end of football games. So, you know, that has an effect on your players. You're like, God, we're going to go through this for 4 quarters again? Now, when Fitzpatrick came in, it added a spark. And maybe, like you said earlier, we're going to do the Woodley-Strock situation, and maybe this is going to be the pattern week in and week out. Do I personally like that? No. I think that at some point, if this continues into next week and next week, the week thereafter, I should say, then maybe you say, you know what? I've seen enough of this. We're going to start Fitzpatrick, and let's see how we play in that situation. Let's give that a shot again, because obviously this Rosen thing isn't working, naming him as a starter. So we'll give him another week or 2 and see where it winds up, and then go from there. So.
Well, the advantage to it, Lou, is you get the other team having to prepare for both quarterbacks.
Yes, which is a good thing.
That's the advantage to it. And that's really the only advantage to it, you know, because obviously you want one guy to settle in and get the job done. But if he's not going to do that, at least make it tougher for the other team to know what you're going to do.
Agreed.
That's about all I got on that game. I mean, you know, I enjoyed the effort. I think people are saying the team itself is tanking. We've talked about it before, maybe even beat it to death, but they're not. The guys on the field are not tanking. The coach is not tanking. The front office, they're tanking. That's a different story. But that's all I got. Hopefully, next off season we can fix the line and find a quarterback, or Rosen, develops and improves between now and then, which I think under these circumstances is a little bit of a fairy tale. We'll see.
Agreed. I mean, in regard to the tanking situation, I mean, if you're tanking, you're not bringing in Fitzpatrick, and you're not giving your team an opportunity to win that football game. I mean, some of the comments.
You're not running the fake punt. There's so many things you're not doing if you're not trying to win.
You're punting, you're running the ball in obvious passing situations. You're being conservative. This team by no means is conservative. I mean, they were shorthanded on the defensive side with Howard, and the guy that they put in there did a really solid job. Needham did a good job in his, replacing him. You're not bringing in Fitzpatrick if you're not trying to win football games. I mean, that was obvious. You're not making those play calls. You're not putting your team in a position to win if you're tanking. So I'm tired of hearing that nonsense. I really am.
I am too, to be honest with you.
The coaching staff and the players are out there trying to win football games. There's nobody tanking. And I've heard it. I mean, I've read it, I've heard it, and I think it's the most ridiculous frame of mind you could possibly be in if you think that this team is tanking and this coaching staff is tanking in any way, shape, or form.
No, they're not. And if you listen to Bobby McCain's comments after the game, it's evident they're not. He was visibly upset. He was visibly shaking.
Right.
He was pissed. He was really pissed. He was pissed because they lost and the way they lost, and he was not happy. So you can't tell me that he doesn't care or these guys don't care and they're not trying.
Exactly.
It's very clear that they are if you pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, look at the efforts by Drake as he's getting hit. He's bouncing around. He's spinning. That's what you want to see, a guy fighting for every single yard. You think guys like that are tanking? And here's a guy that didn't even start, right? He had every reason, Mike, to be, like, God, Balaj didn't play well. They tried to replace me with him. Now they have Walton. Walton starts the game. I think he played the first 2 drives, and Drake was sprinkled in there a little bit. But here's a guy that comes on the field and has every reason not to give it his best, and he's out there busting hump. So, no, there's nobody tanking. That's a perfect example right there. So there you have it.
Well, yeah. I mean, some people say because they went for 2, they were trying to lose. I mean, I hear such ridiculous things.
Just ridiculous. Look around the NFL, Mike. There's teams that are in the middle of all of this. I mean, I watched the Eagles against the Vikings yesterday go for it 3 different times on 4th down instead of kicking field goals. They were trying to get touchdowns, 4th and goal, 4th. I mean, it's happening. This is the NFL now. There's no such thing. I mean, I've seen this. Jacksonville did it last year.
Those extra points are not give-me's either.
Exactly. They're not. They're not. And, I mean, overtime's no gimme either. I mean, you go into overtime. I mean, you have an opportunity. You need 2 doggone yards right there to win the football game. As far as I'm concerned, I thought it was great. You're 0-5. What do you got to lose? I mean, honestly.
Nothing other than the game.
Exactly.
But, you're 0-5. Does it really matter if you lose the game?
I didn't have no. I didn't have a problem with the decision.
I know, it was the play call.
And maybe not even the play call, Mike. It was just not executed well.
So that's my stance on it.
They said I read something where it was working all week in practice, and the bottom line is that it didn't work. They didn't execute it well. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to. The throw was bad. He dropped the football on top of that. The whole play. Right. The whole play.
It was not going to work.
Right. It wasn't executed. So that's the bottom line.
There's 2 teams on the field.
And you know what? When it's all said and done, Mike, whether we won or lost this football game, would it have mattered? It would have mattered maybe down the line come draft time, and maybe this is a positive thing when all is said and done. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think most people will agree it's positive, but on the other hand, you hate to see your team lose. So
Absolutely.
You're kind of in between, but the bottom line is we know what this season is. We know what we're better off doing, and we're not better off winning. It's as simple as that. So
right. A loss now is a win later.
Yes, exactly.
That's the way people got to start looking at it.
It's a couple of better players on the roster,
Right.
Because it trickles down through that draft. It's not just the first pick we're talking about. It's the first pick in every round.
Absolutely. And the farther you fall back, the less situation, the less possibilities you have, I should say, in regard to, trades and whatnot. If you're drafting 4th or 5th come this next draft, you've got 3-4 teams in front of you that can trade with somebody and somebody move in front of you and take the guy you're looking at.
Right.
So you want the least amount of possibilities in front of you. And right now, that's the positive that you take from this loss, is that we're still right at the bottom there, and we're looking at either the first or second pick in the draft right now, 6 weeks into the season. So, that's the positive that you take from it. And the other positive is that they improved. They played well. You saw some nice performances. They battled, exactly.
So, and that shows well to the coach. I mean, if you're Flores, your team's still fighting, you haven't lost the locker room or, any of those other things that sometimes happens when you lose a bunch in a row.
Exactly. They're going in the right direction.
Yep, I think so. I just think people have to be patient and get through it.
Right.
All right. Lou, thanks for joining me this Monday.
My pleasure, as always.
And we'll be back on Wednesday evening.
All right.
And we'll preview the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, boy.
That should be fun.
Go, go, Buffalo. Go, go.
What are you saying? As much as I want to tank, I don't want to hear that.
No, I'm just messing around. God, boy, did I hate them back in the day. Lord have mercy.
Oh, yeah. I still do, even though they don't have Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and all those other guys.
Absolutely. You got to hate our division opponents. There's
of
no
course.
question about
it goes with being a fan. It's part of the rights you sign when you sign up to be a fan.
And I hate when we play up in Buffalo. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's a disgusting place. All right.
Yep.
Fins up, Lou.
Fins up, Mike.
All right, so that's our show for this week. I just want to remind everyone that the Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.